What's up, fam? Extraordinary Life with Elijah. You're watching this video on Sunday, September 21st, 2025 at 10:50 a.m. MST. Today, I am the extra and I am the ordinary. God is absolutely certifiable, friends, and He's been speaking to me in the night on March 17th every year since clear back in 2017. Every year I get to March 17th, as I get closer and closer, I always think, is He going to speak again in the night? Is He going to do it again? And He just keeps surprising me over and over. And this year was no different. Now, when I say this year, I'm actually talking about March 17th, 2022. I'm recording this video for you on March 18th, 2022. And God is so incredible. I'm not sure what our relationship is together, but He and I's relationship is incredibly unique. My journal, I think, is a great example of how my brain works. There's 8 different journals all in this one journal. Obviously, you saw this from last week. There's one journal that starts on this quadrant and goes this way, on the face of every page going this way. Likewise, here, this is the end. This is A omega. This is D alpha. And on the other end of this journal this way, here's all my sticky notes. There's 4 then that go on this page and head this way. Each journal is interrelating with the other one and flows over and flows up and flows back. And that's just how God and I work together as well. But as of to date, this is one of the craziest perspectives that I have ever had with God. In the night, I was super frustrated in the fact that I couldn't sleep. Charlotte was nursing Jamin during that point, and he was feeding every 3 hours or so. And then it took time to change his diaper and get him settled. And I was aware of, I can count up to 7 different perspectives all happening at one time. Now, I'm not sure about the brain science on this. I'm not sure if my brain was actually experiencing 7 different perspectives at one time, or if all 7 of the perspectives all flowed together to one memory, and therefore I think they were all 7 perspectives all at the same time. But I was aware of Charlotte nursing Jamin, and I would rub her back, talk to Jamin, rub his head. I was also aware of the fact that I was in a spiritual place with God, and that it was really hard to find rest in the midst of everything that was happening. So I was having a conversation with him about Song of Songs chapter 3. All night long I looked for him on my bed and couldn't find him. I was speaking with him in my spirit about whether or not I was listening to something that he was telling me to do and wasn't obeying, and what all that was. At the same time, I was aware that I was dreaming, but I was also awake and very aware of the physical. And the third one, in the dream, I was also the overseer, that I was aware of the whole dream, all of the elements, all of the players and participants and everything that was happening. I was myself in the dream. I was my friend Scott in the dream, and I was a dog in the dream. I was simultaneously aware, or I think I was, of all 7 perspectives at once. And as a result, it was incredibly difficult to have any kind of rest. In the midst of all of those 7 perspectives happening, I was also very aware of the differentiation between the physical, my soul, and the spirit, and their very definite boundaries. Each element of perspective was also having its own little side conversation, and was very aware of, here's the boundary of my flesh, and I'm dealing here, and we're right on the other side of that. Here's my soul, and it's watching, and here in this context, the spiritual. Very interesting. To date, I don't think I've ever experienced anything like it. I know I haven't. Now, in the dream, when I say that I was the overseer, that I was looking on the world in my dream as kind of the omniscient eye, I could see all of the participants and I was aware of the dream and everyone's thoughts and feelings within it. And then when I say that I was myself, I was Scott and I was the dog, I was aware of each entity as an individuated person viewing other people, but also aware that I was looking upon them as someone else. Very, very interesting. Now, in the dream, the dog was somewhat hurt. It was a rescue dog, and it belonged to Scott's mother-in-law, Lisa. Lisa loved the dog, and Lisa, I didn't have access to her. She was never visible in the dream, but would only call on the phone. Scott and I were starting up a foreign ministry. It wasn't in the U.S., so somewhere other than the U.S., and I take that to mean that it was something that was outside of what was familiar to us, what was known. We were establishing a mission there. We were sent ones, and we were establishing the kingdom of heaven. We were in an office, and as we were in the office, I looked out the window and I saw Lisa's dog, which I didn't know was her dog at the time being, walking out in the middle of the street. Well, the dog was a rescue dog and wasn't very confident in life. It knew that it had been rescued, but it didn't want to be with other people. It had a suspicious eye towards pretty much everything. As I looked out the window into the street, I became aware, due to my oversight, seeing the whole dream, that there was a flood coming. Now, I don't know what was causing the flood, but it seemed to be related to some kind of a tsunami. The flood was coming, and the dog was very definitely in imminent danger. And as a result of me being aware of the overlook, I became aware of that the flood was coming, and so began to call out to the dog to come inside, to be in the office where we were. Because it was very clear in the dream that the office was going to be a safe place in the midst of this flood. As I called out to the dog to come in, I was also aware of how the dog was feeling in the street, that I could see myself looking out of the window, looking on the dog, calling to it, but I could also be the dog looking at myself through the window. Now, in that context, Lisa called and said, "Elijah, my dog is in danger. Could you please reach out and help my dog?" I said, "Of course, I already am." Now, as I was talking with Lisa and I was calling out to the dog, Scott was at a table working. He saw me and he told me, "Elijah, the dog is not going to come inside. It doesn't matter what you do, that dog is not going to listen. It's just the way it is. It's wounded, it's hurt, it doesn't want to be with people, and it's not going to come inside." As all these things were taking place, the flood came in a flash. As soon as the flood hit the dog obviously changed its heart. I was the dog, I know. It was desperation, fear, regret. Why didn't I listen? Why didn't I go inside? But it was too late. Nothing that the dog could do could get the dog into the office. The flood water swept the dog in front of the left of the office where we were and back across around the side and out of sight. Lisa was concerned, that she was upset, but she wasn't distraught. She thanked me and Scott for doing all that we could, but understood that the dog had been swept away. As the dream then unfolded, Scott continued to work at his table, and as I began to walk around, there was a window. This was the office. There was a window on this end of the office that looked down in this huge area that was an open foyer atrium area with other offices all facing towards the atrium. As I looked down, our office was in the highest position of all of the other offices. And as we looked down, I saw a line of dogs out front of what was the pound that was on this side of the atrium area, and the dogs all stretched out. Somehow, after the flood, the animal control had gotten Lisa's dog and a whole bunch of other dogs and was processing them to re-enter them into the pound. Now, as I looked down and I saw Lisa's dog, I realized that a change had occurred in Lisa's dog. Previously, when I was the dog out in the street, that the hair of the dog was incredibly coarse. It was dark brown and not mangy, but not fine and well kept. But as the dog stood in the line outside of the pound, the hair was incredibly fine. It was curly and had been brushed, and it smelled good. Like you would want to smell it and like rub your face in the hair. Like the dog's appearance had greatly shifted after the flood. The dog was standing third in line, and in its position was incredibly important. It just manifested itself as third in line is incredibly important. Now, as I looked out on the dogs, all of the dogs in the line, that there was a spirit over the dogs that they were bad dogs. I'm a bad dog. And as they were under that spirit, none of them wanted to go to the pound. They all wanted to be free, but they all told themselves, we have to, we don't want to, but we're all bad dogs. As I watched the dogs, Lisa called, and the conversation picked up right away. Like we had already been in conversation. Lisa said, do you see the dog? Yes, I'm watching him, Lisa. I'm watching him move forward. And she said, you have to get the dog out of the line. You have to get the dog out of the line before it moves up to second in place. This is a window of time. Do you understand, Elijah? And I was making agreement with her in the dream that, yes, I understood the importance. As we were talking, Scott looked up and saw that we were talking about something, but he didn't know what was happening. Obviously, I knew this because I was Scott, but not Scott. Scott jumped up and came over to the window, and as soon as he saw the situation, very quickly assessed by observance what was happening. I began to call out to the dog, get out of the line, but I didn't use words. That in my spirit, as I said, get out of the line, that I, as the dog, heard my soul and my spirit saying, get out of the line. And as the dog, I could hear the urgency and the compelling, the encouragement, the power, get out of the line. But regardless of what I said, the dog would not leave the line. It wanted to, but it couldn't. It was trapped by the thought, I'm a bad dog. I don't want to go back to the pound. I want to be in the office now, but I can't. As I was speaking to the dog in my spirit, Scott heard me calling to the dog audibly. And Scott, again, assessed the situation and his known history with the dog and said, the dog is not going to come. It's not going to come. And what he was saying was 100% true. I couldn't disagree with what he was saying, but yet I persisted in calling to the dog. It was then that I had a spiritual idea. Rather than persisting in telling the dog to leave the line, the thought came, have the Spirit draw the dog out of the line. I didn't say the idea out loud, but Scott understood what I had purposed in my heart, and both of us were incredulous to see, would this even work? Are we allowed to do that? I have no idea. Will Spirit do it? But we both stopped saying, get out of the line, but that in our hearts we purposed, come. Come, dog, but we didn't say it. At this point, I became aware of a shift in myself as the dog in line, that through the thought of, I don't want to go to the pound, I don't want to go back, I want to be with my masters in the office, that there became this thought of, I think I could, I think I might. And as Scott and I watched from the office window, the dog slowly began to move to the side out of the line ever so cautiously, testing, is this possible? Moving so slow that it was almost hilarious. But Scott and I, we began to be filled with so much joy. The dog is moving. He's coming out of the line. And as the dog moved out of the line to come to the office, the dog in front, second in line, and the dog in the back, fourth in line, both were pulled with the dog and were suddenly in the office together with Scott and I. The dog moved back and forth by my right side on the lower part of my calf, just below the knee. And I could feel the smoothness, the coolness, the thickness, the softness of the dog's curly hair rubbing on the outside of my jeans, but feeling the coolness through my jean material on my leg. And that I was aware that the dog loved to just sit and to move and to rub his fur on the side of my leg, so comforted and so comfortable with me, no longer seeking to escape our presence, be outside the office, but to be with us. And that's where the dream ended. And I looked at the clock, and the clock said 2:34. Now, as you'll remember, that the original video of God's revelation of extraordinary life with Elijah, that it was 1:23, as easy as 1, 2, 3, so 3, 2, 1, go. That there's a dream yet that I haven't told you about, that then interplays also with 1, 2, 3, 3, 4, 5. And now this time I awoke immediately at 2:34. And as soon as I saw 2:34, it turned 2:35. So it was 2, 3, 4, 5. That God is just so ridiculously silly. Now, as God and I began to speak about what in tarnation, the dog, the flood, the feelings, what's going on, that my heart is greatly given to the bride of Christ. That there's so many areas where I have deep concerns for the bride, and that I myself have existed like Paul in a place of the homeschooler of homeschoolers, as to religious perfection, having read I Kissed Dating Goodbye, as to moral perfection, voting Republican and conservative my entire life. And the list goes on, that I was in this space where I was being ensnared by the emptiness of religion and politics and their rising leaven in the world. And that as I've undergone that process of God redeeming my heart and calling me into the kingdom and redeeming me as his bride and causing me to be washed with the water of his word, that I have stepped into the kingdom of God and that I'm ruling and reigning along with Christ. But that there's so many that I reach out to who have a bad dog mentality. There's the bad dog. They want more. They seek to know God in a deeper way, but they just don't know how. And as they look into the things that are beyond them, that are deeper by way of life in the Spirit, that there's this ick factor. They don't want to go. But as the floods are coming, that as the enemy is beginning to war against heaven more and more, that when the floods come, that there isn't a firm foundation on solid rock, and that so many people are swept away. But that God is still redeeming. That God, in his heart that he's given to me, that I'm still pursuing those who are lost. But that he's giving me this heart to know that regardless of my role in the bride, that the bride and the Spirit both say, come and eat bread without cost. Come and be a part of the celebration with the Father. Come in out of the field. Come in out of the pigsty. Come into my Father's presence. Come into the fullness of his joy. That God was imparting to me rest. To say, don't strive Nothing you can do, nothing you can say is going to move a dogged, dogmatic church. The profession is true. Nothing you can say will make them move. But as you intercede by God's Spirit, that He causes all things to work together for good, that a very coarse-haired, dogmatic church that's not mangy, that's been rescued, but not quite brushed, not quite kempt, not quite something you want to put your face in and smell, that as a result of having gone through the torrents, that God works all things together for good and brings about a very, shall we even say, wool-like, a lamb-like softness to the hair, that it's groomed through perseverance, that's speaking by the Spirit, that those who have been very dogmatic, which includes myself, one under grace, will begin to say out of freedom, I think I will come. I think I can go. And that as led by the Spirit, that God will not just bring the dogmatic, but the ones in front and the ones behind, and that God will bring an increase as a result of allowing His Spirit to do the work. As I laid there in bed, pondering all of these things with God and saying, God, what is going on? I have no idea. There's no way I'm going back to sleep. I opened my eyes and committed to, I'm getting up and I'm going to write these things in my journal. I looked at the clock the second time and it was 3:14. And God said, I'm imparting rest to you to bring you full circle to my love. He is so good that as then I began to write, to ponder, and to think what He had done again on March 17th in my life, in the night, in a dream. There's just so much celebration that pi is a number that goes on forever. It never repeats. It goes on forever and ever and ever and ever. And however long you want to pursue the fullness of the manifest love of God, this token of His affection, this circle representing an unbroken love, covenant love, you can pursue Him as far and as long as you want to without ever coming to the end. Friend, my encouragement for you is that if you haven't known the Father in this way, to have Him either speak to you in the night, in your dreams, or that you don't believe that it's possible to have a relationship with God where you can be with Him and be comforted by Him and be comfortable, and that you're attractive and pleasing to the heart of God, that He's not ashamed of you and that He wants you to be with Him, that He takes deep pleasure in you, and that you can't get out from under the bad dog mentality. That you're just a bad dog, that you don't want to be under the oppression of the pound, the animal control. But what can you do? If you are under that, my declaration to you is there's freedom for you in Christ, and that where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. If you subscribe to what I'm doing, hit the button, hit it, and then hit the bell as well so you get notified with the new content, with the new content. And if you love this video, you didn't just like it, hit the thumbs down button. Pray blessings on our lives together. I love you guys lots, and I will see you in the next video, which starts now, because we're at 26 minutes, 30 seconds, and my camera turns off at 30 minutes. Guys, God, He drives me wild. I know the last two videos have been extremely long, but out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. And there's a lot in my heart. Gonna go ahead and cycle this thing. There you go. This one hopefully will be shorter. My kids are hilarious. I love them. They teach me infinitely. I think in spending time this morning with God and just thinking about the full circle, that so aware that I'm declaring these things here with you, and you're watching this video here on Sunday, September 21st, 2025, but that I'm also declaring this to you on March 18th, 2022 at 9:57 p.m. that my child is 2-3 weeks old, but now that here he's 3.5, that I'm starting a company in 2022, but here in 2025, my company's up and running. God is so good, but I think as I long in these spaces, what I long for more than anything is to be with you. And God's bringing me full circle and giving me hope to know the Spirit will bring the fullness of everything that I long for. What's up, fam? Extraordinary Life with Elijah. And today, Kailani is my extra, and I am the ordinary. Kids never cease to amaze.